Good.
Go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't even say good evening, ladies and gentlemen, because the two ladies have both apologised. In fact, looking at our agenda, and it says to receive and accept apologies from absence, and basically it's an apology from everybody who isn't here, which is Councillor Clark, Osborne, Adams, Fuller and Chesser. Do we accept those various apologies for various reasons?
Did you include Fuller in that?
Yes.
I did.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yes.
Yes.
Moving swiftly on in the circumstances, representation of interested parties, none tonight. Declarations of interest. Firstly, any disclosable pecuniary interest? No. Secondly, any other interests? And I need to declare one. The last planning application in relation to the Gascoigne, as I looked at it, I thought, those photographs look incredibly familiar. They're actually taken from the back garden of my daughter's house. So it's her property that's essentially affected by it. So I better declare another interest on the strength of that. Next item is the minutes of the previous meeting, that's to say the one held on the 28th of July. We had a somewhat better turnout because everybody was there. Look at it, except Councillor Adams. They've been circulated. Anybody who was present wish to propose them?
No.
Councillor Coulter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only thing I'm slightly hesitating about is under PC 2629, any other business, the final sentence says items go on August PC agenda for further discussion. I'm not entirely sure
It hasn't. I'll come on to that in due course under correspondence and other matters to report.
So we will pick that up.
Well, yes and no, but anyway. Yeah, it should have been on the agenda, but unfortunately, it got overlooked. Right, that brings us on to the actual planning applications themselves. The first of which is for Forstnurst Lane, probably better known to us as the Angel, formerly the Angel Public House, now Will Phillips Funeral Directors, where councillors may recall we suffered the misfortune of having a car go through the wall, almost literally, in as much as it took out an element of the bottom level of the gable end, which caused internal damage to the fireplace area as well. And this application is therefore essentially to undertake remedial works to enable the, sorry, I'm just trying to find my note. It's there. So it's a Grade 2 listed building in the conservation area, but it does appear very much as if it is purely to reinstate. They will reuse such stone as they can. If they can't reuse enough, they'll source, as they put it, local quarry stone to be approved, presumably by the conservation officer, I would guess. Similarly, there are imperial bricks used within the chimney breast. Again, they're going to use any salvage bricks they can, but if they can't use enough, they will source new to match. Essentially, also they will have to replaster internally, effectively integrating that into the plasterwork that remains. There was, according to the Heritage Impact Assessment, some detailing of the plans to work, but they described it as not being new. Clearly it's lost anyway, so all they're going to do is try and replace it essentially again on a like-for-like basis. And that, in essence, I think is it. On the face of it, it's actually a necessary application. It can't stay as it is. The listed building is actually impacted literally by this. I would guess that the only, as it were, caveat that we might make, and there was nothing on the portal apart from a comment from Historic England, which was basically, oh, here's some useful information about sourcing stones and effectively repointing walls. And apart from that, they said, refer it to your conservation officer and your archaeology section. As of the weekend, there was nothing on there from either. I would guess that all we would really want is for the conservation officer to ensure that wherever practicable, existing materials are indeed reused, and happily it seems the hearth and the fireplace itself somehow survived the trauma, so they're simply going to be refitted in. Other than that, it's difficult to see what comments we might have. Either of you?
Well, I think you summarised, there's nothing to add to your summation. I mean, it needs to be done. They seem to be taking account of, doing as much as they can using the stuff from the accident and sourcing other, reclaimed stuff. Obviously no objection, although if the conservation officer raises something that we're not aware of, then they're clearly better placed than we are.
I concur. I really have no real objection to this.
Right. That moves us on to the first of three tree applications, all because they're in the conservation area. First of them is 90 South Road. I have to say the information on the portal is limited in the extreme, because apart from the application itself, there is nothing to tell us why.
You missed the four.
Sorry, which one?
Sorry, which one are you looking at?
I was looking at 90 South Road.
Lisa. I think you typed
90
it in
South
correctly.
Yeah, it's 2602249 TCF. No, 2249.
Yeah, it's not typing the form. Oh, that's it, it's press it harder.
Stroke TCA.
You don't have to put it.
Sometimes it. There you go. As you'll see, literally two documents, one of which is the application, which tells us no more than they want to remove the conifer, without giving any reasons for so doing. And then we have a location map, which shows where this tree is. So the property itself stands on the junction of South Road and Ship Lane. The tree is located in the front area of the property, and there's nothing more I can tell you about it.
I mean, it seems a no-brainer to me. Basically, we're unable to make a decision until the applicant supplies details on why this work is needed.
The difficulty with that, I agree with you, but because it's only a TCA application, actually, the only thing that we can invite the council to look at is whether the tree should become subject to a TPO. And I very much doubt that it's that. But I have to say, I think it's a flaw in the system that you can push an application in to remove a tree in the conservation area, not tell us why, not provide us with a photograph of the tree so that we can judge it for ourselves. But it's very difficult to see that we can actually make any comment. I'm almost inclined to suggest that we go no comment as opposed to no objection.
90s, that's very.
Yeah, I've got 97, which is, if you have a look on Google Maps, there is a tiny conifer very close to the house, which is a
Well, I
probably,
think those are 2 trees.
I think two.
Yeah, I think that's 2. Well, clearly one's evergreen and
Oh,
clearly one isn't.
that's deciduous, yeah. Looks like an overgrown Christmas tree.
Quite. It's not
I must admit, I didn't think to do that when I was looking at it.
This is a conifer, so it's actually that one.
Is that one there, in the back? Wow, tons. Begin to wonder why it's even here, to be honest with you.
Yes. I think if there's a window behind here, it's clearly blocking their own lights, but that's kind of their problem.
Yes, yes.
Should have planted it there in the first place.
Unless it's self-seeded, I suppose.
Well, if it did,
You could have pulled
it's
been there for a while.
It's
Yes.
been there for a while.
It's not affecting anybody else or anything, is it? It's just a garden, so it's not.
Yeah.
It's clearly not a very old tree.
No, no.
Yeah, compared to these.
Completely, yeah.
I can, if I lived there, I can see why they probably want to get rid of it.
Yeah, so,
Well, yeah, as I say, I think we'd probably go no objection, no comment. Entirely even about which we do.
I kind of object just because, I mean, yeah, I know you're absolutely right, David, but there's no obvious reason to cut it down.
Well, we could just make an observation that no reason is advanced in the application for the removal of a tree located within the conservation area. There is, having looked at it, we see no obvious reason to remove it, and leave it at that.
Yeah, that's, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
that's fine,
Okay, good. We haven't had a call.
We've found a way of doing it. Right, 2 Cricketers Way. I'll let Felix to get this one up. 2602212. Again, you'll notice there's not exactly a lot of documentation in there. There's an application form and a redacted application form. I must admit, at a quick first glance, I couldn't quite see what had been redacted. But the only significant thing, arguably, about the application form itself is that it gives some indication of the materials to be used. There on the left-hand side of the screen is existing, and if you go to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll then see what is being proposed. Essentially, it's a utility room off the kitchen. So you put in a new door linking the two internally. the thing will be built with brickwork that matches the existing sloping roof, which has concrete tiles to match the existing, and UPVC window at the front also to match the existing. For some reason, as you can see on the extreme left-hand side, there is a door at the back, but nowhere in the application does it talk about the door, but I'm assuming it's going to be UPVC to match existing. Indeed, they might even reuse it because in the kitchen where the back door currently is, the plan is to take away the back door and push in a window. And so the back door essentially moves across to this new utility room area, which is single story, relatively modest in size. And I couldn't see any obvious reason for getting excited about it, to be honest.
It's just a straightforward utility.
Exactly so.
Not that.
Given the materials, given its location as well, it's effectively a corner plot between Cricketers Way and Hillfield Road. Don't think it's going to impact anybody.
It is actually on the junction between Cricketers Way and whatever.
Hillfield, yeah. It's effectively the property is a corner plot. It's a plot with enough space to take it.
Yeah.
No objection? No objection to that one. Trees again. In fact, trees singular. This one, 2602158, 41A West Street, which is a property in the ownership of Angle Schools. I doubtless Councillor Clark was here and have declared another interest in it. This time, that's what we get for a location plan. So kind of the bullseye marks the spot. There you can see it's well actually away from West Street, where a lot of those properties extend back some way. The application does say that, if I can find it, essentially the thing is overhanging two properties. It's not that easy to tell from that aerial photograph whether that is or isn't the case, but again, it is simply a TCA application.
Yeah, you can't really tell on the street who doesn't give it because it's behind the 8th Street.
It's difficult to make anything out from that.
No, as you say. It's certainly the case that it goes into the, because there's a well, it's not a drive as such, but you can actually drive up there. It's essentially a private road that goes to the school common room, which is further north of there. And it clearly overhangs that quite considerably.
Yes, it does.
Maybe that's what they're doing, is taking that out and overhang out.
Yeah, I mean, it describes it as overhanging two properties rather than specifically a roadway, but
Do they need to take it all out? No, because talking about filling it.
they're talking about felling it to ground level.
I think it's a considered application. And of course, it's a sycamore that grow very rapidly anyway.
Yes, I mean, it's not a tree of
Yeah.
any obvious merit from that perspective.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And there's also plenty of other vegetation.
Yes, there is.
So no objection to that one.
No.
Right. Sorry, this one is 01980. So if you look at, okay, so the greenhouse that you see is my daughter's greenhouse. You can see that the trees in the Gascoigne behind the wooden fence come over it.
Right.
In the winter, a branch came off the tree, which happily did not come down in the greenhouse because it would totally had it done so. And I know my son-in-law and daughter have been pressing the school for the last 2 years to do something about these trees along the back. And there is a second shot from another location within the garden. That's at the far end of the garden. The property you see isn't theirs, their property. It's quite a long property, so the house is right down the far end. But again, you can see how it's overgrown a bit. And essentially, the application is to do works to T1 and T2 and T3. And you'll see G1 is referred to, which they say in the application is predominantly elder, which just grows like a pest, basically. And they want to take that out completely, whereas the other ones, it's essentially reduction, it's essentially tree works.
Okay.
I don't have a problem. It seems to be sensible maintenance. You know, they're clearly using an experienced tree surgeon, etc.
Yes, this one and the previous one, and you'll notice a certain similarity in the way the applications are put together,
Yeah.
are both the same person,
Yeah.
by the name of Rose, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a Courtenay,
No,
Yeah.
used.
no,
That looks like another no objection.
I'm just, I'll actually see it from my house too. Just why not?
Yeah. So, well, that's all the actual planning applications themselves. Not quite the end of the evening's entertainment. In terms of planning outcomes, there is finally an outcome to the Picarthy site, where you will see right at the bottom, despite all sorts of observations that we've made, essentially the application has now been permitted. So this is the application in effect to bring it back into use as a garage,
Yeah.
as opposed to the previous application, which was for a residential conversion. And I rather suspect that people are going to be rather more happy with this than they might have been with the other. The only basic observation is, and I know we made this point, actually I think following the last meeting, that the trees outside number 1 New Street are growing so that now you can't see the front door of the listed property at all. And perhaps, and I know we raised it before and they said, well, the application's either been granted or is about to be. But I think we should be encouraging the owner to tidy that area up as a matter of some urgency, because it can't be doing a listed building any good, and it certainly doesn't look good. So if we could perhaps make some sort of an observation again about that. Other than that, nothing else, I don't think, in the planning applications that.
I think also on that particular one, correct me if my memory is wrong, they've actually reduced the number of car washes.
That's right, the original application had 4 in it. They then agreed to cut it back to 2, which we were happy about. And the last one was at 12 New Street, which I just basically referred to. We hadn't liked the original application, didn't feel there was enough information there, but took the view that if the conservation officer wasn't concerned upon it, then we withdraw our application. And then what basically happened is they put in a new detailed design and access statement incorporating a heritage impact assessment. And on the strength of that, the conservation officer didn't object, and then Sea Archaeology didn't object, Historic England didn't object, so we withdrew our objection to it on that basis. Planning appeals, there are none, which brings us to the next question of our own terms of reference. What it is about this year, normally we manage to do this very strictly at the start of our year, but it's had a checkered history. It kind of got missed off the agenda when it shouldn't have been, and then eventually we managed to get it over the line, and then promptly ran into some issues because the current terms of reference essentially give the chair of the committee delegated authority, so to speak, to put a response in on behalf of the council in the event that the council can't do it because of, say, an important meeting. We've operated that way for quite some time without issue. Then, unfortunately, there was an application at the old Abbott House residential site to redevelop it residentially. We ended up in a situation where I used my delegated powers. I took the view, well, it's easier to object, and if we then think appropriate to withdraw the objection, and we can withdraw it. So I did object on the basis that 9 properties emptying out onto the road was perhaps excessive. This caused the developer to get extremely upset and took the view that the chair of the planning committee shouldn't have such powers. And essentially Emma investigated it and came to the conclusion that actually the developer had a point. Because a single councillor shouldn't have a delegated power to do that. So although it's worked very well, we're being told we shouldn't do it anymore, which means realistically we need to remove it from the terms of reference. The question is, do we replace it with something, and if so, what? At the last meeting, I came up with a proposal, a kind of formal words, which if necessary I can go over again. But we also decided that we'd go to Danny Moody and ask Danny what he thought about the situation. Danny did think that we would need to change, and essentially suggested a kind of I think possibly the best way of putting it is a 3-tier approach. If I can find it.
It's up on the screen.
Yeah, okay. So he suggested that one could classify planning applications as you say, hang on, into three categories. Those to be decided by officers, those to be decided by the planning committee, and those to be decided by full council. Historically, we've never done that, certainly in the 40 years that I've been in the council. In as much as we've never had a situation in which an officer of the council, in effect the clerk, could exercise powers in connection with a planning application and either approve it or reject or do whatever. At times, planning applications were dealt with in full council when I first started. After a while, the whole thing became unwieldy. We used to have paper plans. We'd sometimes end up with a pile that high for a single application. We'd have them spread out across tables or everywhere, and we'd have the full council trying to look. It was very, very unwieldy, very time consuming, and we set up a separate planning committee, which has varied between being a planning committee on which all members of the council were de facto members, to a specialist planning committee, which is what we have now, albeit that any member of the council can come along. I think my view is that going down the route Danny suggested, and presumably other councils do it, it seems to me that you then end up having to define exactly what applications go into which of these three pots. And then somebody has to actually sit there and say, I calculate this to be pot A, pot B, or pot C, presumably the clerk.
Can I kind of interrupt you? Because I think, very clearly, I think Danny's suggestions about having this system of 3 tiers is just simply unworkable, partly because of what you're just about, what you're touching on. Who is actually making that decision? And if that decision is taken away from the planning committee, there's a danger that it actually gets directed in the wrong way, if you see what I mean. Things may be going to full council that needn't go to full council, things may not go to planning committee that need to go to, and so on and so forth. The point is, it doesn't actually solve the problem. If anything, it potentially makes matters worse. So my kind of view is, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. You know, what we have is workable. We already, within the terms of reference as they exist, have the powers to send things to full council should we wish to do so. So that kind of dodges that. And actually, I personally don't think, and I don't know what Lisa thinks, I don't think it's almost fair to give Lisa or the town clerk responsibility to say, well, actually, we can make a decision on this without actually referring it upwards or downwards, depending on which way they look at it. It's creating an onus that I'm not entirely sure we should give you that responsibility. I'm sure you would exercise it very well, but I think it's actually quite unreasonable. So the only thing I would say is the thing that we've got to fix is about delegated powers.
We have to look at this.
You had a
rare
succession,
situation.
as you proposed at the previous meeting.
I did. I mean, clearly, we're talking about something that has probably happened since we introduced it, less than the fingers on the hand. It's not something that happens regularly. And the suggestion that I made,
I mean,
which is a
read
bit
it down
convoluted, I've read it down, I've circulated it since. But I'll read it again. In the event that it is not possible for the committee to respond to a consultation within the time allowed to do so, for whatever reason, including a scheduled meeting being or becoming important, then the committee chair may A, ask the planning authority for an extension of time to respond, and or B, convene an emergency meeting of the committee, and or C, refer any application to full council for it to consider making a consultation response.
Yeah.
Don't think any of those things are
No,
particularly
that's
controversial, and are probably, even if they weren't set out in black and white, I think it's what was happening. But then I've got the but, which
Yeah.
covers the, if none of those are going to work because we can't get the extra time, we can't convene an extra meeting, we can't get it before full council. I put, but if it shall prove impossible to secure an adequate extension of time and or to convene and hold an emergency meeting of the committee and or to refer any application to full council in time for either to agree an in-time consultation response, thereby rendering it impossible for a consultation response to be submitted in time, then the chair should ask the town clerk or the deputy town clerk, and it might be that we might need to take out the words of the deputy town clerk, because I get the impression that it's a power to the clerk only, to consider submitting a consultation response to the planning authority, and may invite the town clerk, sorry, deputy town clerk, to take into account the views of the chairman and or any other member of the planning committee on any application in doing so. In other words, supposing that tonight Councillor Shaw hadn't managed to get back from Boston in time, and Councillor Quartermain and I were sitting here looking at the agenda and figuring out, oh dear, now what are we going to do? Assuming that it wasn't going to be possible to do anything other than cobble something together to ensure that a response is given, it would be possible for us to go to the clerk and say, had we been core at X? And depending on timescales, because we might know in advance that we weren't going to be core at, although once or twice we've had a situation where we turned up on the evening and because of circumstance, it's been in court. If it's possible, we then invite members of the planning committee, if they wish to make any suggestions they like to the clerk, but it's ultimately the clerk who will make any representation, giving the clerk the opportunity not to, if they choose not to, or to take into account or not what is the feedback. The reality is surely this, that the clerk is not going to probably receive feedback from his or her councillors, ignore it and go and do some frolic of his or her own. I just can't conceive that that is likely, unless in some bizarre way we are misdirecting ourselves, which again is difficult to envisage how that would come about.
I mean,
And so I would imagine that all that would happen is that the clerk would look at whatever was in front of him or her and would do a consultation response on the strength of it. And it might be that in essence, instead of me emailing Lisa and saying, these are the responses, I email Emma and say, these are my suggested responses, email the rest of the committee and say, you know, if you want to get something to Emma, and ultimately she's the one who's making the call, which is legitimate.
so, in short, David, I really do not have any problem whatsoever with your suggested amendment to the TOR. It covers all bases, as one might expect, given your diligence. However, the only recommendation I would make before it goes to full council, hopefully sign off, is that you've written it as a lawyer, which means that you've abandoned all punctuation.
Yes.
And I would prefer, before it goes to full council, that punctuation be restored. You've done it as, you've gone into lawyer mode.
Yeah, I accept that.
Yeah, I would accept that, I think it's fine, I have no problem there at all.
Alright. I'll see if
that
I
aspect
can make it a little bit more user friendly.
I don't think, I wouldn't have changed the words, I think punctuation would just help
Yeah.
the readability, that's all.
Alright, I'll put something together that will then go to the council, which will be a recommendation from this committee for that
absolutely.
change. Right, thank you for that.
It's a bit like reading,
Can I just say, can we talk about the other thing that Danny talks about is, the numbers of people, a number of councillors being on the committee? Because he actually says here that if all members included, the council is not a committee, but if it specifies a committee should be a minimum compromise of half of all serving councillors, which could in theory mean that the number of members of the committee was less than a quorum. Do we need to clarify that?
again, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, I do too, but-
I don't think Danny did.
Okay.
Yes, I think our previous term said all councillors may be members of the committee. Membership should, as a minimum, comprise half of all serving councillors, to include the town mayor and or the deputy mayor. Membership should be elected at annual meeting. Standing Order 18 shall apply for the committee to be quorate. And then it became more complicated. As all councillors may be members of the committee, there is no maximum number of councillors who may be members. Initially, members of the committee should be appointed at the annual
I just
meeting.
wondered if we could take that out.
At any subsequent full council meeting, any councillor may be appointed to membership of the committee. I think that's probably right. Mayor and or deputy mayor will be members of the committee. Then we said membership should, as a minimum, comprise half of all serving councillors. I mean, it doesn't say must, so it says should. In other words, what we were trying to do is to encourage councillors
As many as.
to participate in the work of this committee, because I think a lot of us see it as quite important local function. Membership should, as a minimum, comprise half of all serving councillors, but so long as the meeting is quorate, it may proceed, even if the committee comprises less than half of all serving councillors. Quorum shall be such a number of councillors as is prescribed in standing orders. Any councillor may attend meetings of the committee and, with permission of the chair, speak at a committee meeting, but only members of the committee may vote at a committee meeting. I mean, we could take on board Danny's point and simply say membership should be the mayor, the deputy mayor, and based on 14 members,
That's 5 other.
5 other councillors to be elected at. And
It would simplify. I kind of get what,
Yeah,
But
I get
what-
it.
what you're also saying there, and it is actually important, is, and we've seen it happen, I think I've seen it happen every year I've been on this panel, on this committee, which is, shall we say, people nominate themselves at the annual meeting, and we start maybe with, I'm making it up, 7 members or 6 members. Actually, that'd be too small, but you get the idea. But then, maybe halfway through the session, people will say, oh, I want to join you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The point is that the membership does change throughout the year, and this allows it to do so. Whereas if we were overly tight about
The actual number.
it essentially being appointed by the annual meeting for a specific number, then once it's fixed, it's fixed. You see what I mean? This
It would
allows,
be fixed that way. In other words, it would be fixed at 7. But if obviously somebody didn't want to remain on the planning committee, there would be a vacancy, and that vacancy could be filled at a full council meeting rather than having to wait till the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
I think what Matt's is saying is that if we're at 5 + 2, and another councillor halfway through the session starts to have a real interest in planning, they can't really join, but it may be useful for them to join the committee. That's basically what you're trying to say.
Well, and also, I mean, again, I actually think it's fine. It covers all bases. It also allows, and it makes it very clear, saying that any councillor may attend meetings of the committee, you know, which doesn't happen. I mean, I think this is a different committee for exactly the reasons you've set out, David, in that what we're trying to do is involve as many councillors as possible. And this is a way of doing it. I kind of say, you know, despite, I think fundamentally Danny didn't understand it. And my kind of view is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, certainly this hasn't been, nobody's threatened us saying that's unlawful, your decisions are therefore unlawful.
No, the only thing that's unlawful is essentially.
Was the delegate.
Delegate.
And we found a way around that. And I must admit, I think I'm with Max on it basically, that it's worked for us.
Yeah,
I just wanted to have a discussion because Danny said.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll recommend to full council that that's that. We can say, look, Danny made these points, but we've thought about it, and our view is we actually like it the way it is.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we will have to change the other bit, and this is what we've decided it should be.
Okay.
And the fact that you need a lawyer present to actually interpret what it actually says.
Yeah, I can never retire from this. Yeah. We all done on that one?
Well, I don't have a problem with it.
No?
Yeah,
All
I
right,
really
so that bit's going to stay. The only bit that's going to change is the bit around the delegated powers, which will be slightly.
I mean, when Emma and I have discussed it, technically, the only difference in what's going to happen is it's got to go through one extra person, i.e. Emma.
Yeah.
Because like you said, we're not going to look at your responses and go, no, we completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
So it's just like a sign off from Emma saying this is.
More or less.
In
I think in
reality,
practice that's
In
what's going to
reality,
happen.
that's the fix.
But it gets us around this difficulty
Yeah.
because it's not me or
No,
anybody else doing it.
and it covers the chair's back, you know, it shouldn't be you, David.
Yeah, actually, probably better from my perspective then, because I can say, well, it was merely my suggestion to the department. Ultimately,
Yeah.
part of her role is to decide what to do with this.
Yeah.
Right, enforcement issues, updates, if any. I'd rather assume that because you put up community governance review on the street, that means there is no update. Which brings us to the community governance review.
It's quite a way down, page 32, well, 31, 32.
In broader terms, what has been suggested is that
Keep on going.
the recommendations of
There we go.
Handle Town Council
There we
and
go.
of
Elect-
Blackpool,
Yeah,
there we go.
up of it, there we go. It's all that section
Yeah, it's
there.
all this section here. So, Arundel and Blackthorn both said Cottescott Meadows is a nonsense. You've got the boundary running right through it. That's wrong in principle. It's wholly detached from Blackthorn. It doesn't identify with Blackthorn. It should be part of Arundel. And pretty unsurprisingly, those conducting the review have agreed with that. However, our recommendations went further. We said that Old Farm Lane, which is the last little close of houses as you go out of Arundel towards Blackthorn, and which to all intents and purposes looks as if it's part of Arundel, but it's actually technically in Blackthorn Parish, that of itself was a nonsense. Blackthorn agreed that it was a nonsense, but said the residents there have made it clear that they wish to remain part of Blackthorn rather than become part of Arundel. And so Blackthorn didn't want to change, Arundel said it should be changed, and The review has suggested that it should be status quo. My personal view is that we should renew our request because it is just so utterly illogical, but perhaps do so on the basis of saying that if it is the view of those conducting the review that the expressed views of the residents should take precedence, then we would respect that and they should leave it as it is. But that logically, it just doesn't make any sense. And Blackpool recognises that, and I think the people who wrote this actually recognise that. It's an anomaly, but it's an anomaly because Blackpool Parish Council polled those residents, and those that responded indicated quite firmly they wanted to stay as part of Blackpool. I don't think it was necessarily economically driven because some of them are pretty active in the village. So there's that issue. The secondary issue, where I actually think the people who've written this have missed the point entirely, is that on the opposite side of the road to the Cotterstock Meadows development is the primary school, and immediately beyond it, a field. We know that that field has been put forward for allocation in the local plan. We know that that local plan covers a period from 2031, when the current plan expires, to 2045. And people have written this for the, I'm going to just call them the review people, seem to have got it in their head that we're sort of saying, well, it's 2045, and they're saying, well, yeah, but we're only looking at the next sort of 5 to 10 years. Well, the point is 5 to 10 years takes you into that new local plan period. Furthermore, all the sites that are allocated in the current local plan for Oldham have already got planning permission and have either been developed or are still in the course of being developed. There are no more allocated sites. That plan has still got 5 years to run. There is a real possibility, particularly as that site is potentially going to be included in the next iteration of the local plan, that the owners of that site put in a planning application saying, well, there needs to be development, you know, we can't just have a period of 5 years or more to the next local plan with no more development going on, and with the pressures from central government to build. I have a feeling that that might be knocking at a relatively open door. And if it happens, it creates exactly the same anomaly as exists essentially with the Cotterstock Meadows site. Well, I say exactly the same, similar. Not exactly the same because the parish boundary wouldn't run through the middle of the site, but the whole of the site would be in Blackthorn Parish, completely isolated from Blackthorn Village, etc., etc. The authors of the initial report from the review say, well, yes, but it's contrary to the coalescence provisions of the current Blackthorn Neighbourhood Plan. Current Blackthorn Neighbourhood Plan is due to expire in 2031, which is the point at which the new local plan will kick in. As yet, there is no work being done by Blackthorn on producing a new neighbourhood plan. It's been on the stocks for over a year, but nothing seems to be happening. In any event, I don't have a huge amount of confidence that that policy about coalescence is going to be sufficient to ensure that that site isn't allocated for future development in the new version of the local plan. And if it is, I accept it's an if, we're going to have this anomaly. Looked at the other way, what on earth is the problem with it being transferred? It's not as if it's an area of land of importance to the parish of Gladthorne. I should know, I'm a parish councillor in Gladthorne, and perhaps I should have declared that interest at the start as well. I'm aware that this issue is going to be discussed by Gladthorne Parish Council at its next meeting. Because it didn't say anything about this site first time round. They are being encouraged by somebody who is sat in this room to correct that when they make their observations on this. And I will be suggesting to Gladthorne that they should back what Andrew was saying for the same reasons as Andrew said it. If Gladthorne were to back it, I think there is a possibility that this review would then say, well, the two local councils are now singing from the same song sheet, and they may be more inclined to go along with it. There's a few ifs in that, but that's my take on it.
I'm just trying to work out two things, David. A, what we're being asked to do, and B, how we got to this point in the first place. And it may be that Lisa can help me out. So, taking the second one first, how did we get to this point? We obviously discussed it in planning, and you're right that we suggested sorting out Codstock Meadows, which doesn't seem to be an issue as far as their recommendations go, but also, which I think are a more polite way of doing it, annexing things the other side of the road.
Yeah.
What I'm struggling with is, did that go to full council?
Yes.
It was a full council
Yes, it
recommendation. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the reason, the way my logic is going is that if that was a full council decision in the last 6 months, we can't change that decision.
It's not a question of changing it. Because what I'm suggesting is that if you like, we go back to NNC and say, we think you've got it wrong. You should have accepted our proposals for these reasons.
Well, to a certain extent, we don't actually have another option. We can't change that decision.
Well, we can if enough councillors
Well, no.
say so, except, well, they can, because there's a provision for doing it within 6 months. But you have to have a certain number of councillors who ask for it to go on the agenda so that it can be reconsidered. The last time that happened, the council got itself in a total.
So are we going to make a new recommendation to all councillors? I'm just trying to work out
what I would
invite
the committee to do is to ask full council to authorise a response. Now that response has to be, I think it's the 1st of October from memory.
We've got
we've got time, A, for it to go on the agenda for full council, and then if full council wanted for some reason to send it back to planning to finalise a response to the review recommendations, then fair enough. All I'm saying is that as a council, we shouldn't necessarily accept what the current recommendations from NNC.
So are you wanting us to agree? So a proposal will obviously have to go to full council in 2 weeks' time. We've still got time for that. Are you asking us to agree in outline what that proposal should be? Because you're asking us to, we're asking them to reconsider it. My personal view is I think we should let sleeping dogs lie over New Farm Lane, because in their recommendations, 5.13, they very clearly think that they want to reflect the established, as they call it, community ties. What they're effectively saying is the people that voted, we're not going to overrule that. And I think if we were to go against that, we would look a little bit silly. That's my personal view on New Farm Lane. However, where I do think we should ask them to reconsider is about that other chunk of land, which is as yet, well, it hasn't been, there's no applications to plan to do it. But as you rightly pointed out in your summation before this is a plan for the next 5 years, and this is about trying to say, well, look, it would be better to look forward and ensure that we don't have yet another Cotterstock Meadows on our hands.
Yeah. I think in terms of the Old Farm Lane thing, I understand why you say that, which is why I kind of said, if we're going to respond to it, we should probably say, look, it is anomalous, but if you are going to take the view that the position of the residents is paramount, so be it. But in terms of what I'm inviting this committee to do, it is no more than to go back to full council and say that we should respond to the recommendations made in connection with the review by reasserting our position. Now, it may well be that others will share Councillor Shur's view in relation to Old Farm Lane, and that full council takes the view, yeah, we want to do it in relation to the Cotterstock Road site, but we no longer want to pursue the other one.
Yeah.
Which is, fine. If that's the decision of council, I can see the arguments, as it were, both ways in relation to that. I just think the important thing is that we should respond to the recommendations, particularly pointing out why we think
So
they could be argued.
No, I'm with Matt. I think, quite honestly, it's very clear what they feel about Old Farm Lane. But if we get clarity on that piece of land opposite Cotterstock Meadows, and I think that would be useful.
So in terms of next steps, I'm conscious that obviously I will be chairing the full council meeting. Will you?
I would assume that what will happen is that there will be, under planning, I would imagine there will be a community governance review. I will put forward a proposal.
Right.
I will put the proposal, I think, on the basis of, as I said, that this council should respond by reasserting. But it could well be, because 2 out of the 3 of us have expressed a clear view, that we accept what he said in relation to Old Farm Lane. And if that's the view of the majority of the meeting, fine, because that will then either full council will do that piece of work, probably by asking me to do it, or it'll refer it back to planning, which will probably still mean I will draft it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Others will approve it.
As long as when it comes to full council, I as chair will be able to
Absolutely.
get councillors to have a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. We are on the call.
Right, I'll put together a proposal along those lines, which means we might have done it by 8:30, but perhaps given those last 2 items, it's unsurprising it's taken a little longer. Any other relevant matters for report only, Councillor Courtenay?
Just a very minor one, Black Hot Lane, it's all done one way, which is great, but we have started to see instances of at least 1 or 2 a day going the opposite way. I know there's been some comments on saying the need to clear a signage on the North Road, Black Hot Lane area. That's just a comment, that's all.
Councillor Shur?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you, Chair.
Couple of observations, really. Councillors may have noticed a recent planning decision for yet more warehousing
No, yeah.
All Day Parkway, off the A605 at Clapston. which is again got staunch up in arms, and again muttering about judicial reviews. Whilst I suspect that that particular bird has flown, it reinforces my view that we are going to have to be very, very firm in relation to future applications that are going to put even more traffic onto the A605, and we should just be very conscious of those, particularly in relation to applications which might actually be brought before Huntingdonshire District Council rather than this one. So I just make that observation.
I know you've asked me before, but if I can just respond to that, just for information. So Staunch have been in touch with me as mayor, and to cut a long story short, they will either submit a written document outlining the latest situation so councillors are aware of it at full council, or they may make a personal representation. We haven't quite decided what, but there will be a report at full council on the 15th.
Good, I think that's appropriate. The other one is Peterborough local plan. I think the decision is going to be taken late this afternoon or this evening. But my understanding is that the mega development out of Walton Way, which would have impacted us, has been taken out of the, as it were, final draft of the plan. So that's perhaps a little bit of good news. But again, we just have to be conscious of the fact that we're affected by decisions made by Peterborough City Council and by Huntingdonshire District Council in particular. Just have to keep an eye on them. Other than that, I've no further points.
Just the,
Oh, yes, there was.
about the cost of it.
Yeah, actually mentioned earlier that there was an item that should have been on the agenda tonight.
Oh,
But
yes,
wasn't, because unfortunately, Lisa very fairly put her hand up to me this morning and said, oops, I forgot to include it, what are we going to do? Broadly speaking, residents at Cotterstock Meadows have contacted Councillor Fairhall. Broadly speaking, unhappy with what might be called playground provision in the development. And he's got involved, and he had some time ago said that he would rather like to hear from what town council's view was. It missed our last agenda because of timings, and it missed this one because of human error. The view I take is that arguably it's not really a planning committee matter in any event, because it's either estates, because if there was any suggestion that this council should take it over, it's that committee that's going to have the responsibility for it, or it's full council. We have got a full council meeting coming up, and I know that we've sent
With a
one or
very
two
full
things
agenda already.
up there. It's what always happens in September, of course, because we haven't had a meeting in August. But I don't think we can avoid it. It might be fairly quick, because it's been the consistent policy of this council for some time now to say thanks but no thanks to developers who have wanted us to effectively adopt community spaces, be they populated with play equipment or just grass areas or what have you. Because ultimately, even though we get a commuted sum, those commuted sums are designed to last for 10 years, in reality probably last for less. And you've then got a permanent commitment by the council, which
I mean, my personal view
stretches.
is, well, I'm not sure if it's technically or what, it's just a personal view. It seems to me that it should go to full council, but actually via estates making a recommendation one way or the other.
I did toy with that idea, actually. I said to Lisa in an email this morning, oh, let's get it onto the full council agenda. But that wouldn't stop the matter being on the agenda for estates, which of course will be before the full council.
I just think it would.
And then if estates were to be making a recommendation to full council, and if the recommendation is what I suspect it will be, I might imagine that the discussion in full council will take all of about 15 seconds.
And the reason I think it should be that way, because there's a danger that otherwise full council impose something on estates to which there's zero appetite.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, slight change to plan to what we discussed this morning, but I think that's sensible. And I think that really does.
Yeah. Although we can't make a decision under any other business, but hey ho.
Well, it's not a decision, in as much as
You just requested me.
Yeah.
a request has been made that a different committee deals with a letter that's coming. I don't think that's a decision as such. Right,
A pragmatic solution.
pragmatic end to the meeting. If I will call close at 20 to 9.
Thank you.
Did you have any other business? Oh, you